So I was diagnosed in 1989. I came down with mono, so through blood and urine testing, they discovered that my kidneys weren't functioning properly. They were only about 30% at that point. I was 18. I was actually still in high school finishing up. And the only thing they could do at that point was essentially track the progression of the failure, if that's the right phrase behind that. And so when I was 23, just finally graduated college, my mom was a good match. And so we went into transplant. That was my first back in 1995. And that one went almost 18 years. My second transplant, my husband donated to me through a paired donor exchange. So everyone in the group essentially put in a kidney and received a kidney back with the couples, even though everyone wasn't an identical match for each other. Unfortunately, that one, I always say, went down in flames in about 4 months flat. The rare kidney disease that I have came back and attacked that kidney, and they ended up having to remove it. I became so toxic. So then immediately I was placed onto dialysis, and I stayed on dialysis almost 5.5 years. During that time, I was waited on the transplant list, and it was just 4 years ago in June, past my 4-year mark with that kidney. Really, the daily struggle, certainly mentally, as far as the constant fear, and you're always battling your diet and facing the monthly blood draws to make sure everything's on target. A lot of what can be elevated from your diet essentially it could cause immediate death if you really went overboard, but a lot of it can slowly cause long-term damage. So there's always the battle behind that, feeling like you're letting people down, be it family, especially friends, things of that nature, but just the pure exhaustion. I didn't have so much physical pain. I think a lot of people do, but just literally being able to stand up off a couch was almost like, I always wonder, would it be like if I fell in quicksand trying to get out? It was just as if I was holding 50 pounds that I needed to push up and get through. But the problem is you're sitting on the couch, 50 to 75 times a day because you constantly feel the need to sit down. And so it's constantly the mental battle of, here I go again, just to stand up. A lot of times I would have to sit down just to get up a flight of stairs and take the rest. Trying to shower could take me anywhere from 10 minutes of laying there, sometimes 2 hours, sometimes all day, just to get in and get my body clean and go through that motion behind it. So, yeah, essentially it was just, a lot mental and physical. I was no longer working and a lot tied into it just because of the disease itself. Mm-hmm. Really, I think I knew of it because my sister, she started out as an ER nurse and eventually went into being a dialysis nurse. Obviously, she is more than aware of my disease. She had actually been tested a couple of times at that point to be my next donor. So I think at a certain point she had recommended, if you ever end up on dialysis, to consider this. So when I was in the hospital, that second transplant was failing. I think I already was aware and was able to do a little bit of research. So when they did remove the toxic kidney, I immediately said, please put in the catheter for the abdomen that allows you to do that at home. But while you're healing, and there's a good amount of many weeks of training to be able to know how to go through the disinfecting and the setting up of the machine and everything that goes into it, there's a little bit of lapse. So I did some, coming home from the hospital especially, some hemodialysis at home with a nurse assisting that. But then at that point, we'd also moved during that time from Chicago to Las Vegas. And through that long and detailed process behind that and getting supplies shipped to the new house, I did do in-center for a while until everything got settled down and up and running. So that eventually, really, that took a few months, that whole process. So eventually I did finally get settled into the peritoneal dialysis at home. I myself really struggled with in-center. That's done 3 days a week, where home dialysis, or at least my peritoneal, was done 7 days a week. So it's a little more gentle to the system. Before even finishing my treatment in center, and even so much as getting up out of the chair, sometimes I would go so far as to be physically ill. That can include the dizziness and vomiting and having a hard time standing up and getting moving and things of that nature. I'm trying to think how to explain it. It was sort of a different toxic feeling when I was in center. The struggles, and as far as the sleep itself, it was a little less uninterrupted. Meaning when I did the peritoneal at home, you're hooked up to a machine, your abdomen is inflated with 2 liters of the solution that's needed to perform the treatment itself. So that's obviously uncomfortable. The machine itself makes a lot of noise. So when I was doing in-center, there certainly was none of that. I could literally, as exhausted as I was, get upstairs, crawl into bed, and be done. Where on peritoneal, still exhausted, but had to plan enough time to be able to, certainly if I was downstairs, make it up the stairs. And then I always call it sort of a surgical scrub in, to the point that, I had to put my hair up, scrub in all the way up to the elbows, with time involved in that. Close all the windows, turn off the fans, close the doors, make everything was shut down to make sure the sterileness was as it needed to be. So in order to do that prior to the actual dialysis, took a lot more effort. However, I enjoyed sleeping in my own bed, having my own TV, my own snacks, things that I needed. But the problem sleep-wise that I ran into with that was my husband was working full time. Sometimes he'd travel, sometimes he wouldn't. He was not ever a deep sleeper to begin with. So I never wanted to wake him. He was really carrying the burden of not only work and the children and their school activities. Sometimes he needed to help out with everything as far as shopping, cleaning, these things that I was struggling with. So I never wanted to wake him up. It got to the point where sleep was rough. I started taking doctor-approved Benadryl each night, just to really try to keep myself asleep, at least during the time that he was. So I got involved through the National Kidney Foundation. I started working through them, realized there was quite a few different volunteer opportunities. And that, I want to say it's one of the newer ones, but it's probably been at least a year that I've worked with quite a few people now. And it's a 5-week sessions, essentially. It's 1 session a week. And these are individuals that are obviously on dialysis that I'm able to work with, talk to. There was a lot of training involved to be a part of the program. And it touches upon different topics as far as really making the dialysis time and treatments worth your while, making sure to attend and stay through all treatments, making sure as far as fluid intake, which is a big hot topic with dialysis patients. Salt intake also leads to the high blood pressure and quite a honestly a struggle. All of these are really struggles when you're on dialysis. So it's really just talking with them, working with them. I'd like to think coaching probably isn't the right word, but kind of seeing how they go about it, maybe what little changes could be made to make things a little bit easier and better for them as they go through that process. And honestly, hopefully provide a little comfort and hope as well with the positivity. To any way possible, find some positivity. I mean, I know a lot of times it's hard to look on the bright side, especially with you're not feeling well. For me, it was just hanging on to everyday small things, teaching both of my children to drive at that age. Little things, seeing, both my son and daughter go off to their first dance, taking pictures of that, being around for these little things. I got to see my son graduate high school during the time. I literally laid in a transplant bed the day after and watched my daughter on a Zoom graduate her high school. So sort of just being around for game night and hanging on to any little detail that makes someone happy is sort of the that sort of thing. And honestly, the other thing is to keep, especially if someone is new on dialysis, it's a process. It takes time to get the medications balanced out, the diet balanced out, get a feel for what works for you and your body, because really it seems very cut and dry and the rules are the rules, but everyone is a little bit different with what works for them and what doesn't.